It's time for the Volquest Mailbag Podcast, answering your questions from the General's quarters every week, right here on Volquest.
Good Thursday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com Mailbag Podcast, presented by our good friends at Smoky Mountain Organics. Be sure to check them out online at SmokyMountainOrganics.com. Smoky Mountain Organics features the best brands of CBD products, bath and body care items, organic teas. They've got the largest selection of plant therapy essential oils in Tennessee, plus many more items. If you don't visit them online, you can visit them in person at Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, Sevierville. That's 3 of their locations. And, of course, they have their location in Knoxville at 8018 Kingston Pike. That's Smoky Mountain Organics. Be sure to check them out at SmokyMountainOrganics.com. With Rob Lewis and Austin Price, I'm Brent Hubbs. Glad to have you along. We got to jump right into the questions. We've got plenty of them as the Vols are coming off that win over Missouri. It's got a lot of recruiting questions heated back up, and a lot of people want to know where recruiting's at, as well as plenty of football, some hoop stuff. So we'll dive right into it here. We'll start with Z-Vol, who wants an update or a grade on Joe Milton and Hendon Hooker on their performances this season. I think Joe Milton's an incomplete, based on the last couple of weeks, because he hadn't played a meaningful snap. Played a good quarter against Bowling Green to start the season, and then it didn't go well for the next, 4 quarters till he got hurt. We haven't seen since. So, obviously not a high mark for Joe Milton and an incomplete the last few weeks. As for Hendon Hooker, I think that's a grade that's going up, Austin, when you look at him. I mean, you go back to that interception against Pitt, wasn't very good, but the last 2 weeks he's been really good. Yeah,
I would go B+ to A- for Hendon Hooker. I mean, it depends on how much you want to weigh that interception against Pitt on him. If you don't weight it that much, then, it's an A-. If you weight it a lot, it's B+. That's kind of how I would look at it. I mean, he's continued to grow, and that's what you want to see, is he continues to get better with every outing. Can he take what he did at Missouri and build off of it against South Carolina? Again, I think this game's huge, just because if Tennessee can build upon the Missouri win, and I'm not saying win 62-24 again, but win convincingly against a Gamecocks team that's just not very good, then he just continues to build confidence in the program. So for Hendon Hooker, I think he drives this whole thing.
Rob, I think when you look at Hooker, I mean, whether you do a letter grade or you don't, I mean, the biggest thing is what Austin's talking about, and it's the growth and how much more comfortable. You look at that Missouri game, starting progressions, starting to see him go to multiple reads, making faster decisions. If the first read's not there, he's quickly getting his eyes where it needs to be to find his auxiliary or his second receiver or even his third receiver at times. I mean, his eyes look like they're getting better every week in this offense.
Yeah, he's getting rid of it quicker is the biggest thing I noticed. And against Missouri, they were more successful on those 20-plus yard throws down the field, 3 or 4. And when he is getting rid of it quick, he's making good decisions. He was 11-12 on the short stuff, which is, you got to do more than that. But when you are throwing it short, to be that efficient and to get rid of it as fast as he is, I think is a real good sign. And I think also makes the best point. You can see progression, whereas, and it was a small sample size, and I don't want to be hypercritical, you didn't see that progression with Milton from game 1 to game 2.
Yep, absolutely. All right. At Mom Power wants to know, here's one reason I like Josh Heupel. Compare the last 48 hours before the Pittsburgh game to the 48 hours before the Missouri game. Heupel learned from his mistakes and made the corrections. That shows his willingness to grow and learn as a coach and make progress each week. This is huge. Do you agree? Thoughts on this? I don't know what the 48 hours look like in either one. I know Josh Heupel wasn't happy, when he talked about the Pittsburgh game. He wasn't happy when he talked about their work before, their last 48 hours before the Tennessee Tech game. But Rob, I don't know what that means, to be honest with you. I mean, I think this team was certainly more dialed in to play against Missouri. I think they were more ready to play, I guess. But this is a team that's been ready in the first quarter of every game this year. I mean, I wouldn't have sat here and said, boy, that team was really bad the 48 hours before kickoff to Pittsburgh, because if they catch 2 deep balls or Milton hits them, it's 21-0 at the end of the first quarter, which, quite frankly, was pretty close to what it was at the end of the first quarter against Missouri.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. We don't know exactly what it looked like, and we've heard some things like guys being late for stuff, or nothing major, but just what added up to Heupel to be a lack of focus. And obviously, I don't know that he learned anything. I mean, I think he knew what he wanted. Right. He knew what he wanted. He let all the players know it in no uncertain terms. I think the players learned something about consequences.
Yeah, and learn what the expectations were there. All right, Austin, to you. Vol, since 1996, will Tennessee sign more than 25 for football this year, especially with the one-year roster replenishment from the NCAA?
Yeah, I would venture to say they will. I mean, why would you not? You're naturally going to lose somebody. There are going to be people going the portal. There's going to be people going the portal every year from here until the end of college football. I mean, that's just, or until the end of the transfer portal. I mean, that's just going to be the thing. I mean, there were always kids that transferred. Now you can go and be immediately eligible somewhere. Kids will go transfer more. So there'll be some, attrition, and then Tennessee will, add some guys from the portal to, counteract that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have all of the math, the hard math on all of this, because I think Tennessee's somewhere between 71 and 73 scholarship guys. What exactly?
I heard they were at 78, Hubs.
Well, that's if you count super seniors, which don't
count.
But the interesting thing with the super seniors is next year they do count on your
count. Sure.
So if you bring 5 or 6 of those guys back, then that affects
like
your
Princeton
number.
Fant would be a super senior next year.
Right. Hendon Hooker would be a super senior next year. You bring those guys back, then you got to back them off the 85. So where are you in terms of what that 85 number looks like at the end of this year? I think is the unknown, which is hard to say. Yeah, they'll definitely add 7 or they'll definitely add 4 more, on top of the 25 number out there. Do I think Tennessee's going to sign more than or have more than 25 new players here? Yes, I think they will, but I don't know that it'll be 32 because I don't know that the number is going to be against the 85 is going to be at a level where you can bring that many guys in. And that'll depend on how many people leave, how many super seniors come back, and how all of that plays out when it's all said and done. E. Schaefer 92, do we see Whitehead move into being a legitimate contributor this year? I know they'd already planned on playing him some. He performed really well, despite his skill set being different than the rest, as he passed right on the depth chart.
Well, as several people pointed out last week, I mean, the 3 of us could have ran through those holes Lenneth Whitehead ran through. I mean, he looked good and showed a burst and looked did what he's supposed to do. Has he passed Jalen Wright? I think his work ethic on the practice field the last, month has put him ahead of Jalen Wright. I think there are certain games that maybe don't fit Jalen Wright from a pass protection standpoint, but there are also some games that, that do fit him. So right now, I think, those 2 are kind of battling neck and neck for that number 3 spot. And, we'll see, I think it'll be a game by game basis on who Tennessee feels like can give them the advantage that week.
And I think for Wright, he's got to get healthy. He's been bothered by a couple of things. Lenneth Whitehead got banged up in the game against Missouri. So the availability of both of those guys will be something to watch on Saturday. We know we won't get an answer to it when Josh Heupel meets the media later today. But I think the availability and how effective and how healthy both of those guys are on Saturday is something to look for in warmups. Rob, what did you like about Whitehead that you saw out of him?
Power, first off, but then more agile than I anticipated at his size. I thought, it's a small sample size, but I would call him a decisive kind of one-cut runner that gets downhill in a hurry. I mean, we're talking about 9 carries, so I don't know that we can really dissect his game. Just a big guy that can move, and looked instinctive.
Yes, and as Austin mentioned, there was one cut was only needed because there were a lot of holes in that Missouri defense to run through. I don't want to take anything away from what he did, but that was a nice, easy day running the football for those running backs. I heart balls. You guys have mentioned how the 22 recruit rankings have been affected by kids not being evaluated at camps due to COVID. Now that most high school seasons are at their halfway points, can you give a stock up, stock down on the following players relative to their preseason rankings? All right, Austin, you ready? I'm gonna go play by play here, name by name with you. Wade twins, stock up, stock down. I'm going stock up.
Stock up. Keaton's a stud, and Destin he's not a quarterback no matter what he thinks, and he won't be a quarterback at Kentucky. But he'll be a player for them.
Ty Simpson, up or down?
I'd go stagnant.
Stagnant. About what you thought he was going to be there.
Yes.
Okay. Isaiah Horton, from a production standpoint, I'm going to say down.
Down. He's not catching anything. They're not throwing it to him, and he ain't getting open.
Cam Miller, up or down? I'm going up.
Yeah, up. But I mean, they're in 2A now. He's dominating every week. I mean, he's doing what he's supposed to do. So
numbers might be
the worrisome part would be if he weren't putting up 200 yards and 4 touchdowns a game.
All right, Jordan James, up or down?
Stagnant. He's what I thought he would be.
Dallin Hayden,
stock up because they got nothing, and he's seeing 10-man boxes, and he's still over 1,000 yards.
Barryon Brown,
stock up. Problem with Barryon's got to take care of his stuff off the field. If he doesn't improve his stuff off the field, then it's going to hurt him in the long run.
All right, Anthony Brown.
Doesn't matter. Tennessee's not recruiting him.
Jalen Lewis.
I would say stock up. Willie went out and watched him, a couple of weeks ago. I think Coach Martinez was impressed with what he saw. But they were too slow in the process. Kids come into Arkansas. So, I mean, would be shocked if Tennessee can get back in there.
Yeah, I mean, he just won't know about their stock, about where they're ranked, where they are in their rankings. Jacob Hood. I don't know about that one. I've not kept up.
He's not playing, because he's technically too old. So he's not playing. So
no stock.
I can't evaluate.
Right, Caden Pope, unbelievable.
Stock up for me because he just balls every week. I mean, it's an interesting recruitment. I think there's some hope that he may make it up here for a visit this weekend. But again, it's because if you just look at his pure stats and his film, then the interest just doesn't. It's weird. I don't know how to explain it.
The level of interest from schools at the Power 5 level don't match what his production and film looks like to me. So I'm not sure what the disconnect is there. It's not a grade or off the field thing because that's not. I mean, he's got no issues there at all. And lastly, Elijah Herring.
I'll go stock up, man. He and Caleb been balling, so they've been really, really good. And so I would only go Tennessee. The best thing Tennessee did was push there in April because that kid has gotten better and better and better. And he's smart. He's well put together. You and I, when we left Riverdale, we both looked at each other in the car and said, Tennessee's going to look back and go, that was the smartest decision we made.
Yep, I don't disagree with that. All right, Rob, Rocky Top 73. Does Chandler Jackson project as a pure point guard in college, not a combo guard, 2 to 3 year player at this point? Contrast his strengths style with Ziegler and Kennedy Chandler.
Jackson is definitely a combo guard. He is. I'm speculating to almost certainly be a 4-year player, and he's bigger, stronger, not nearly as quick as Ziegler or Kennedy Chandler. Much different.
Deshaun 13 wants to know, was there enough quality players in the portal for teams to flip a roster last year? Talking about football, do you see Tennessee being able to continue to flip the roster given their connections or being attractive to players because of the way they're playing right now? I think the portal is risk reward. You better do your homework on a lot of kids, in terms of what you're getting off the field. If he's a good player, why is he looking to leave? I just think that there's a whole different set of evaluation that has to take place with kids in the transfer portal. Probably more so than I thought there would be when the transfer portal came about.
I know from talking to people on the basketball side, however, what you said is exactly right. Before they even talk about how good of a player he is, they dig around on why is he leaving.
Yeah, I just think that there's enough red flags that you got to sort through the red flags to make sure that you're good with everything you might be dealing with. I think the best portal kids are going to be the guys who are making a step up from a smaller level to a bigger level in school. A guy who's been super productive at, a non-Power 5 school looking to go to a Power 5 school. I think those are over the history of time. Over time, those are going to end up being your most productive transfers.
And I would think kids that are leaving because of a coaching change in there too as well.
Okay. Yeah, you're probably right on that. I don't disagree with that. Austin Anthram wants to know, who can we look to see as visitors, both official and unofficial, this weekend? Tell us about the DB from Jersey that could be visiting, who decommitted from Rutgers. Think the staff might take a run at UCF linebacker Eric Gilliard that entered the portal today. I don't think Tennessee's going to make a move on Gilliard. You never know, but I don't think that's a direction that I see Tennessee moving in terms of the transfer portal after he went in there today from UCF. Even though he's been productive, starting linebacker, I don't see him being ultimately a fit that Tennessee's going to look at in the portal. What about this weekend's visitors, AP?
Well, there's 3 official visitors. There's Joshua Josephs, who again has been to Michigan multiple times, but has yet to pull the trigger publicly. I don't think he's pulled it privately either, based on people I've spoken with. You have Brian Grant, who is the commitment that's going to be here officially, and then the young man Davison. I don't know how to pronounce his last name because it's not in front of me, and I'm not going to attempt to throw it out there. The kid that's committed to Rutgers. Tennessee has worked that one. Tennessee, Ole Miss, Michigan. That's who's battling it out for him. There's going to be a ton of unofficial visitors here, or at least it's set up that way. Hubs, all I know is I started making some phone calls, and I was like, thank God, this sounds like a recruiting weekend. Like it just got me excited because it's been such a just like watching paint dry for the last like 6 weeks or more. But I mean, in state, you got Caden Pope, you got the Spillmans, Caleb Beasley said he's coming, Jacob Page, Brandon Hayward, the Herring brothers are going to be here this weekend. Out of state guys like Vic Burley may be here. Jordan Thomas, who's the corner from down in Alabama that I would put on commit watch if he comes up here. He's going to be in town. Let's see, Caleb Webb's going to be in town. Most interesting note here. I'm basically giving away the war room on the podcast. James Pierce.
You're fired. Hush.
James Pierce and Dalen Smothers.
Could be back.
Going to be here. Or coming back.
Wow.
Yes. So
that is
at least that's tentative. Okay.
Sure.
They may not all make it in, but if Tennessee gets 65 or 70% of those kids, that's a really good weekend for a noon game.
Yeah.
Again, they won't get them all. All those names aren't going to make it in, but at least those names have indicated they are planning to come Saturday, noon, South Carolina.
And that is certainly some movement on the recruiting fronts, which has been extremely quiet, obviously, for the last several weeks, as you mentioned. So we'll keep tabs and keep working on those guys to see how many of those are still scheduled to come in as late as Friday. And again, you never know what happens on Saturday morning when somebody wakes up. I think getting those kids from Lipscomb in is a positive sign.
Well, it makes sense. They play Catholic here Friday night, so why not just take around?
But taking advantage of that is a good move by Tennessee, and shows that they've been working those kids and certainly has some attention with those guys in the 23 class and beyond. All right, Smyrna VFL wants to know: do we see any new starters on defense this week, particularly in the secondary? With the passing of the transfer recruiting rules, do you see the staff start scouting more high school players and take more projects, or dedicate more time scouting JUCO and contacting portal players this season and going forward in the future? I don't think we're going to see any new starters in the secondary unless Trayvon Flowers is back healthy. If he's back healthy, I think they go back to their original starting lineup in the secondary.
Yeah, I think you'll continue to see him mix those young guys in. I think Slaughter earned himself, some playing time. And with Theo's flexibility, you can move some guys around if you feel like Danico Slaughter deserves every third series or something like that. But no new starters.
Austin, on the recruiting stuff, they never stop recruiting high school players or evaluating high school players.
No.
You got too many people in the building watching tape.
No, and here's one. We will save it for the war room. But there is a player that Tennessee has evaluated and worked. And it's coming in this weekend. They haven't offered yet, but potentially could this weekend. And he's got a little NFL lineage.
There you go. All right. Well, no more
hints out of that. For the war room.
There's a little tease. But I think you have to, when you're investing the amount of money you are in recruiting and the bodies you're investing in recruiting, you got to evaluate the transfer portal.
Well,
You got to evaluate you got to evaluate all of it constantly, not nonstop.
You got to, portal, JUCOs, high school kids, and then the all important kids that committed elsewhere that shunned you early that you might come back around on later. And that's why you handle yourself the right way when a kid doesn't pick you the first time.
Yep.
And see what happens.
Don't spike the phone. Don't spike the phone on a kid who tells you no thanks.
That's right.
You wish him luck, and if I can ever help you, don't forget about me. I'm here for you, type deal, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the best example of that ever was Jeremy Pruitt and Cade Mays.
Yeah, it was. I mean, whether you want to rip on Jeremy Pruitt or not, that's exactly right. If he'd have handled that one different, Rob, then that would have never come back around. It helped him
not burn any bridges.
Yep, it's exactly right.
Mean, why would Hub say somebody was going to rip on me? I don't understand.
Brandon SB wants to know, are Dylan Sampson's measurables updated? Got him at 5'10", 180. Will the staff look at adding another running back? Dylan Sampson is a lot smaller than Evans. Jabari is small, even smaller than Jalen Wright. Will we look to bring in a more every down back? I think he's heavier than 180 pounds. I don't know what his measurables are currently.
I would say 190. I mean, he's not way heavier, but no. I mean, he's bigger. Yeah.
But they're going to, I think Tennessee's going to bring in, or going to certainly look to try to bring in another back if they can, right?
Yes, 100%. I don't think they've officially decided that, but yes, I believe that that's probably going to happen, whether it's going the transfer portal route or, taking a swing at someone who's, committed elsewhere.
Hard Hat Vol, can you tell us which players are for sure gone after this year and who has one more year of eligibility if they wanted to come back? I think we mentioned some of the Princeton Fant. I guess technically Cade Mays could, but nobody expects that to happen.
Cade Mays will not be back.
Right. But in theory, he could be one of your six, but he's not going to be. Princeton Fant, Kayron Calvert,
yes.
Hooker. Those are three that I can think of right off the bat. I don't know who else.
Grant Perking.
I'm sure there's another there's a scholarship guy on defense, somewhere who could come back. I'm not sure if that will be the case or not. But I think there's a total of six, and those are three of those six. Vol WWA, not WWE, Austin, WWA. Okay. Do you think this staff regrets not going to a more experienced receiver on the crucial fourth down pass against Florida? Jones would have been who I would have liked instead of the drop ball by Callaway. I don't know if they sit around and regret that. I've not had that conversation with Alex Golish or Cody Burns or anybody. I think it's clear, Rob, that Velus Jones in the slot makes the most sense for this offense and changes the way it's going to change the way this offense can go if the quarterback keeps playing well. Because now you got a defined role. Velus is the best guy with the ball in his hand and the underneath stuff. And
have you kind of always thought that about him, though, Hubbard?
I have, yes.
With his, just purely from a physical standpoint, from the way, he's built more like a running back than a wide receiver.
And he's got the most wiggle of any of those receivers.
Yeah, without question. I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, and maybe Austin, they didn't go there with him early on because he missed so much time in fall camp. I don't know. Maybe they just missed that one.
And maybe Javonte Payton has given him the freedom to do that with his progress since the start of fall camp.
That may be something to that too. I hadn't thought of it that way.
I think it's what both of you just said. I think that he was more hampered early on than people realize, and Javonte Payton's growth has allowed them to tinker. So,
will Jabari Small be able to go? What's up with Jalen Wright? Jalen Wright's just banged up a little bit. Small continues to be bothered by that shoulder. I think he's going to try to go, Austin. The question is, how durable can he be? Obviously, he wasn't very durable and couldn't hold up in the Missouri game. So, I think that's an injury that you would like to get him some downtime if you could. I just don't know how realistic that is right now.
I think he's super questionable for Saturday.
Okay. One of the major discussion points on this board prior to the season was how much Coach Heupel improved the quarterbacks he inherited. Hendo Cinco, I guess that's his new nickname, looks more comfortable, looks to be progressing and reads better, making throws that he wasn't during the spring. You discussed Hooker some in the Tuesday podcast, but I'd like your opinion on what you think his ceiling is. I don't know what his ceiling is. I mean, he's obviously emerged as the best fit here. I thought it was interesting, Austin, on Tuesday, Alex Golish talked about one of the things they've learned about him since the season started was how tough he is and how good of a runner he is, because you didn't see that over the summer or in fall camp because of the red jersey that you play.
But you can't put on the Virginia Tech film and see that he's a good runner. I mean, like, he did that at Virginia Tech and did it just the way he's doing it now. I get that. That to me is a head scratcher. I get the toughness part. You don't know that, but like the running part, I don't know. That's a bit of a head scratcher to me.
Yeah, and I think his physicality is underrated. I mean, Joe Milton overshadowed him so much just from a physical standpoint.
Yes, he's a bigger guy, Rob, than most people realize.
He's 6'3", 220.
Yeah.
And the other notion with him is that he did not, in the summertime and even in the spring, is he was conservative with the ball, didn't throw the deep ball, checked it down a bunch, couldn't stretch the field, when reality is he can stretch the field.
Yeah. See, I think that's a great point, Hubbard. I think he was overly cautious to the point of feeling like the guy who made the fewest mistakes would win the job. And I think that's one thing, we haven't heard the conversations behind the scenes with him and Coach Heupel, but I think Coach Heupel has done a great job of kind of drawing him out of that shell and looking to force the issue while at the same time balancing, not putting the ball in harm's way these last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I think that hurt him in terms of the viewpoint of what people had for him coming out of spring practice. And I don't just mean fans' viewpoint of him, Austin. I mean the coach's viewpoint of him is could he pull the trigger and stretch the field? Because that's just, he didn't play it that way in spring ball. I mean, he was the king of the check down the entire spring. His whole spring game was a check down play.
Except for the last throw where he hit Cedric Tillman on the deep ball.
Yep.
In the spring game.
He did hit that one there. Duffield Vol wants to know, how does the O-line and D-line recruiting look for this year? Pretty much done on the O-line. And Walter Nolan's at the top of the priority list for defensive line. They'd take a tackle in the portal, wouldn't they? Offensively?
They would, yes.
But otherwise, pretty done, right?
Yeah, I think they're done with the high school ranks. I think they'll take a transfer.
Okay. Braves Vol wants to know, let's cut through all the BS here. What's the story on Jalen Hyatt and Juwan Mitchell? Just not vibing, buying into the staff? If so, can it be repaired? They say Juwan Mitchell's hurt. The longer he stays hurt and doesn't play, the more Aaron Beasley's taking full advantage of those opportunities, along with Jeremy Banks. So we'll see when Juwan Mitchell gets back or gets to be a factor there. Jalen Hyatt, Rob, Alex Golish made it clear they're looking for more out of him on the practice field.
He made it. I mean, and it's become apparent that they're, and you picked up on it and wrote about it this weekend. They're pulling wide receiver snaps for guys who they don't have full trust in. I mean, for Tillman to play 70+ snaps at Missouri in a game where they scored 62, I think that should have been an attention getter for some guys on the depth chart.
Yep, and we'll see how Jalen Hyatt responds to that. I think the ball's kind of in his court in terms of how he responds to that and goes from there. Nobody in the program's questioning his talent. I think they're just looking for more consistent out of him, for sure. A couple more questions before we get out of the gate. Volunteered 87 wants to know, what is Tennessee's big recruiting weekend? Is it going to be Ole Miss? I know it's been tough with the early games, but what do you think their big weekend is going to be? Is it Ole Miss? Do you think, or is there going to be, quote, a big weekend, Austin?
Well, I mean, just rolled off a bunch of names that I think are pretty important to the recruiting class. So, I mean, this weekend now, as far as official visitors,
that's what I think. That's where I'm going.
I mean, I think Cody Jones and Walter Nolan are going to be here officially for the Georgia game. So,
and they may do some December official visits. They may be a staff that does late official visits outside of the season. That may be a big weekend. I mean, we don't know. We'll have to see what happens there. All right, last two. Assuming the Vols win at least 6 games, will they accept a bowl invite or will they self-impose a bowl ban to appease the NCAA? You better not self-impose a bowl ban if you get to 6. I don't think that's fair to your kids. If you're going to do a bowl ban, you should have done it already. Otherwise, I don't think that's fair to kids who have busted their hump if they get it to 6 to go, hey, congratulations on getting 6 wins. By the way, we're not going to let you go to a bowl game.
Yeah, I agree. I think you should have pulled the plug earlier.
Yeah, if you're not going to go to a bowl game, you should have already done that. Otherwise, you make the NCAA tell you, Rob, that you're not going to a bowl game. You're not self-imposing it.
Yeah, I think all three of us, as we've looked at the landscape of college athletics in the last 6 to 8 months with the NIL stuff, with the lack of disciplinary action against all these cheating basketball coaches like Will Wade, that why would you self-impose anything? I would die on the hill of what are you going to do to me?
We'll see what Tennessee elects to do, but I think that's a bad move if you do that to your kids late in the year after they made their way to get to 6 wins. Last question, TNT Vols. In your guys' opinion, was the Missouri game an aberration, or do you see the guys, or did you see something that made you feel like this team program may have turned a corner? I think you have to be careful in the whole turning the corner thing. I think Missouri's a train wreck. I don't want to take anything away from the kids. I think they played clean. I think they did a lot of things moving in the right direction. But this program's had too many turn the corner games the last 10 years that weren't turn the corner games. So I got to see it multiple weeks.
I was just going to say, do it again this week. Do it again this week. I'm not saying it's win 62-24. Tennessee goes out and wins, let's say 38-17 or 38-21. Then, that's 2 really solid outings in a row. I think everybody would be feeling really confident, probably overconfident with Ole Miss rolling in here next weekend.
Rob?
Yeah, I agree with you, Hubbard. Missouri's just too bad of a team to make that kind of proclamation about. I would view it as a really positive sign that Tennessee took a SEC team, no matter who it was, behind the woodshed like that. But they're just not good enough to, hang your hat and say, man, Vols are back.
Yeah, I asked Josh, or made a statement to Josh Heupel Wednesday night on Vol Calls that, the way guys had talked this week and the way they have kind of handled and gone about their business, they seem like a pretty mature football team. And he did the Bruce Arians double take gif. It was like, whoa, we're not going down that road. That's a little too far at this point to suggest that. So plenty of room to grow for this team, and nobody's suggesting that they have turned the corner by any means. They got to get healthier, and they've got to stay healthier is one thing that's going to be important for this team going down this stretch run of this season, and certainly through a challenging month of October. And we'll see how healthy this team is when they roll out onto the field on Saturday after Al Wilson leads the Vol Walk. So if you're a Tennessee fan going to the game and you want to pay your respects to Al Wilson, then line up for the Vol Walk and see him there. But
9:45.
There will be some 50-ish year old guys with tears in their eyes. However.
Yeah, he was a special cat that rolled through here. There's no doubt about that. So going to be great to honor him on Saturday for all that he got done at the University of Tennessee and all he accomplished here for this program. So 9:45 starts the Vol Walk on Saturday with Al Wilson leading the team down the hill into Gate 21 for the football game. But that's going to do it for this edition of the Volquest.com Mailbag Podcast presented by our good friends at Smoky Mountain Organics. For Rob Lewis and Austin Price, I'm Brett Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Thursday, everybody.
You've been listening to the Volquest Mailbag Podcast every week right here on Volquest.